Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. As you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, we are talking about 10 authors who I think you should try out based on what BookTok does not recommend. Now, I am doing like this as like a 3-parter series video thing, and I will mention this disclaimer at the start of every single one of them. But what I want to say first and foremost before I get into this video is that I am not disregarding what BookTok has done for authors and publishers and bookstores. However, part of this is an algorithm thing, and also part of it is, well, excuse me, all of it is an algorithm thing. Part of it is based on what you're viewing in TikTok, and then the other part of it is what TikTok thinks you viewers will watch more of all the way through. So it's fully algorithm, partly based on what you watch and what you're watching through to the end and interacting with, and the other part of it is what TikTok thinks you'll watch to the end and interact with. However, BookTok does seem to show a lot of the same books because of the algorithm. And this series is just going to be recommending books and authors and other genre types that I don't think BookTok shows as much. And again, this could very much be what I am personally interacting with on TikTok and on BookTok. However, there are certain things that BookTok does push more of and does push more towards. So this is just like another format because TikTok is shortening our attention spans and YouTube tends to be more reliable with longer form content. So this is just a way to have a little bit longer form content and to talk a little bit more in depth about books that deserve a little bit more of a spotlight. And these aren't necessarily underrated books, but they are books that are not talked about, in my opinion, as much, especially on BookTok, but just social media in general. And this series, is not intended as like a BookTok hate video or series. It's just meant to showcase other books that, like I said, BookTok does not showcase as much. In this case, it is authors. I will recommend books that I've read by those authors. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about authors. Next week's video, I'm going to be talking about specific books. And then the week after, the third video, will be talking about specific genres. But it is something that I think we need to spotlight a little bit more and not be talking about the same exact books every single time and on every single platform. Because part of the reason why we turn to social media for book recommendations is because we're trying to find something that we wouldn't necessarily have found otherwise. And that's why we turn to social media a lot of times for book recommendations. And yes, something I recommend a lot on this channel is turning to your bookseller, is turning to your local librarian. I have been talking about it more recently Jesus Christ. I have been promoting this more in more recent months on this channel, but it is something I've been promoting, vocalizing, going to your local libraries, going to your local bookstores, going to your local independent bookstores and seeing what they recommend. But sometimes that isn't the most feasible option, and sometimes your best choice is social media. So that is the purpose of this video and of the series. So with all of that said, let's get into this video. Okay. So I have a stack of 10 books, 10 authors specifically. Again, like I mentioned, I'm recommending recommending a book per author that I think you should try out. And this covers a variety of genres. There are some books that are in the same genre. There are some overlapping stuff because this is based on my tastes and authors that I think you should read. But 10 books or 10 author recommendations, 10 books for those specific authors. And I will preface this more with specific authors, but there's at least one for sure, maybe two to three. But there are definitely some authors that you don't need to try their whole repertoire of works. There are some authors where they have really long books, like the one on top. Like, so you don't need to try their whole library and their whole expanse of what they've written. And sometimes one is enough. And the point of these is to try. Like I mentioned, 10 authors I think you should try. Not commit to. You don't necessarily have to love these. But just to diversify our reading. In some cases, this will diversify. But to also like just expand as well. So getting into this, again, 10 authors. Finally getting into this. Excuse me. So first up is John Gwynne. Now his books are on the longer side, so he would be one that I would preface where you don't necessarily need to read every single one. Most of the ones that I'm aware about are part of a series. So I'm blanking on what the one series is, but there's one series I have the first book, which is this book actually, Malice, which I have not read, and I'm just realizing I grabbed the one I didn't read. But this series, it's The Faithful and the Fallen, and then the other series is the Bloodsworn trilogy, which I have read and recommended. Since I already grabbed it, I'm just going to show it off. I tried reading this, and then I gave it a softie enough because I was not in the right mind frame for it. And his works are really ones that I have to do like at most 2 books a year from him because of how lengthy they are. But yeah, this one does seem interesting, right up my alley. I did really like the Bloodsworn trilogy. And this one, to give the brief description, the Banished Lands has a violent past where armies of men and giants clashed in battle, but now giants stir anew, stones weep blood, and there are sightings of giant worms. Worms. Those who can still read the signs can see a threat far greater than the ancient wars. For if the black sun gains ascendancy, mankind's hopes and dreams will fall to dust. It can never be made whole again. So that's what this one is about. And again, you don't have to try this book specifically. It is just a recommendation. John Gwynne is the recommendation, and this is just the book that I'm showing. You can read the Bloodsworn trilogy. He has a few other books out, I believe, and just try out John Gwynne. He is a really fantastic author, and he's really what got me kind of back into epic fantasy, and I have been trying to look for more recommendations of epic fantasy. But again, John Gwynne is one I can read no more than 2 books a year from. And when I tried reading this one, I had already read about half of the second book of the Bloodsworn trilogy and then the third book, so I was like kind of at my max with trying to start this one the same year. I'm probably going to try again this year, maybe like middle of the year. And then to continue with this recommendation list, the next author I want to recommend is Suji Kim. This is a web novel turned novel, and then it has a graphic novel version as well. But Under the Oak Tree, Suji Kim, this story is absolutely amazing. I love it so much. In it, you are following Maxie. Lady Maximilian is the daughter of the powerful Duke Croiso, but she is rarely allowed outside of her family's sprawling castle for fear that her stutter will tarnish the noble name. When she is forced to marry Sir Riften, a low-born knight caught in one of her father's schemes, Maxie doesn't dare hope for happiness, let alone love. Her stumbling communication and his gruff manner sour their relationship before it can begin, and Riften leaves without a word the morning after their vows are exchanged. Now, 3 years later, after a disastrous wedding night, Riften has returned as a war hero. To Maxie's surprise, despite rumors that he was offered marriage to Princess Agnes, a beautiful and renowned sorceress, Riften still wants Maxie for his wife. And when he comes to claim her, his desire bewilders Maxie, even as she is overcome by the scorching heat that Riften's presence ignites within her. As she learns to navigate the intricacies of her new life, Maxie will find herself and her courage and discover that she is anything but powerless. So that's what this one is about. Very beautiful story, very beautiful characters, and very well done. Suji Kim, I think, handles a lot of these topics very well, and not that a normal person would end up in this kind of a situation, but like for situations that are similar to it, I think Suji Kim really handles the story well. And I also realized I have a space where I can stack my books, and then you don't like see the stack on the other side, which I always kind of prefer, but excuse me. Anyway, moving on. Next up, this is an author I'm recommending because Dungeons and Dragons, dungeon crawls, that kind of a thing has been very popular as of late. And this is kind of like right up that alley, and it's an easy introduction into books kind of about that or with that kind of a setup. So Ryoko Kui, who did Delicious in Dungeon Meshi, absolutely love the anime. The manga, I only have like the first 4. I don't even think I've read the 4th volume yet. I'm probably going to try to do that this year. But honestly, it's such a fun manga. And in this, you're following you're basically following the group. I'm blanking on what the term is called. I'm not a big Dungeons and Dragons person, and so I can't think of the proper word for the group. But in it, you're following an adventure group, Laios and his company, and they escaped an attack from a dragon, but they lost one of their members, so they're trying to return back into the dungeon to get that member back. And 2 of their members leave, and they don't have any money, so they have to figure out how to survive in the dungeon with no money, but also needing food. So that's what this one is. Really fun, and you really kind of need to just go into it. Ryoko Kui really handles the situation as well. It's in a really fun way too. So really good recommendation. The next author I'm going to recommend is Natasha Lester. And the specific book is The Paris Seamstress. Now, I have read most of the books from Natasha Lester. I think there's maybe like 2 of her backlisted books The Paris Seamstress that I have not read, and at this point I'm probably not, because I think I did try to read one of them, and it wasn't necessarily bad. It just wasn't my type, because I feel like once she wrote The Paris Seamstress and then The Paris Orphan, which was the first book that I read from her, and then her later books after those were right up my alley, whereas like before The Paris Seamstress, the books before that, not so much. But Natasha Lester is a really great author if you're looking for historical fiction, and I will be like the first one up to bat if you're asking for or arguing for non-World War II historical fiction. I will be the first one up to bat. However, I think in this time and in our socio-political economic environments, World War II books in the nonfiction setting are very important. So Natasha Lester is a great author for that, because a lot of her books are so poignant and so well done that, like, for me, I don't think any other authors who've done World War II historical fiction, no other authors in that circle will compare for me. So Natasha Lester, Paris Seamstress was the first book, and it is an amazing book. It's the first book that she did within this genre, so amazing. I absolutely love it. The next author I'm going to recommend is Xiang Tong Xiu, but most well known for Heaven Official's Last Name. Now, the largest reason why I'm recommending this is because I feel like the Donghua is more talked about, more discussed than the actual books. Now, the books are very well discussed, and I feel like you see a lot of the bigger, more fervent fans talking about the books and talking about the actual story itself, and not just the Donghua. But this, like, and honestly, I love this cover, which is why I'm showing it off more. But this is such a beautiful series. I did not give descriptions. I didn't give a description for Natasha Lester, Paris Seamstress. So, backtracking a teensy bit, So, Paris seamstress, 1940. As the Germans advance on Paris, young seamstress Estella Bassett is forced to flee everything she's ever known. She's bound for New York City with her signature gold dress, a few francs, and a dream to make her mark on the world of fashion. Present day. Fabienne Bassett journeys to the Met's annual gala for an exhibit featuring the work of her ailing grandmother. Jesus Christ, words. A legend in women's fashion design. But as Fabienne begins to learn more about her beloved grandmother's past, she uncovers a story of tragedy, heartbreak, and family secrets that will dramatically change the course of her own life. So, 100% recommend Natasha Lester, all of her books. Now, back to Xiang Tong Xiu and Have an Official Blessing. And this one, I know the story like the back of my hand at this point. But you're following Jillian, who has ascended to godhood for the 3rd time and graced some of the gods in the process. And to kind of kickstart repaying some of them, because a couple of buildings were destroyed, a couple of the temples were destroyed, he has to go down and do some tasks for the emperor so that he can build up the way to repay them, build up the money so he can repay them. And basically he's looking into ghost kings and restless souls and potential demons, and you're following his 3rd ascension to godhood, and you do get some flashbacks to his previous ascensions. And absolutely beautiful story, and I feel like this handles certain trauma and coping mechanisms so well that, like, it's absolutely perfect. Absolutely recommend this. Have an Official's Blessing. More importantly, Xiang Tong Xiu. I have read the first book of Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, but I have not finished that series. So I don't know if I would recommend it as much as Have an Official's Blessing, but we'll have to see. I think I will once I get around to finishing it. So the next author I'm going to recommend is because this is what really got me into cozy fantasy. Now, I love cozy fantasy. I like the idea of it, but I've had a hard time trying to find cozy fantasy that I have personally loved, and this one is one. So, Jay Penner, who does the Ardenshire Books series, and so A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, and then there's the Librarians and Gargoyles, I think, or Dragons, Librarians and Gargoyles, and then Fables and Games, I think, are the 3 that I have on my bookshelf. Absolutely love the series, and absolutely love the way she handles her stories. And in this one, in the heart of Ardenshire, where elvish enchantments and dwarven delights rule, human baker Aletta Starstone works twice as hard at perfecting her unique blend of baking with apothecary herbs. So when her orc neighbor and biggest fan secretly enters her creations into the prestigious Langheim baking battle, Arletta faces a dilemma. Being matchless, her participation in the competition could draw more scowls than smiles. And if Arletta wants to prove her talent and establish a culinary reputation, she'll need more than just her pastry craft to sweeten the odds. So that's what this one is about. And then the other books follow other characters within this world. So it's kind of like an interconnected standalone. You do need to read the previous books. It's an interconnected standalone series. You sort of need to read the previous books to understand some of the references in the later books, but you don't necessarily have to read the previous books. Absolutely love this series. Cozy fantasy, 1000%. The next author is Sarah Penner, and specifically the book that I'll recommend here is The London Seance Society. Now, I try to read The Lost Apothecary. I always want to say The Apothecary Diaries, but The Lost Apothecary. I had a hard time getting into that. Maybe I just need to read the physical book. But I also read The Amalfi Curse, which I absolutely loved. And hers really has that amazing blend of magic and nature-based magic and realism and historical fiction. Which is why I loved, it's why I loved The London Seance Society and the Amalfi Curse so much. So since I'm recommending this one because I do not have the Amalfi Curse, the description for this one, oh boy, today's been a day, you guys. 1873, at an abandoned chateau on the outskirts of Paris, a dark seance is about to take place, led by acclaimed spiritualist Vaudeline Allaire. Vaudeline Dallaire, known worldwide for her talent in conjuring the spirits of the people who killed them. She is highly sought after by widows and investigators alike. Lena Wicks has come to Paris to find answers about her sister's death, but to do so she must embrace the unknown and overcome her own logic-driven bias against the occult. When Vaudeline is beckoned to England to solve a high-profile murder, Lena accompanies her as an understudy. But as the women team up with the powerful men of London's exclusive science society to solve the mystery, they begin to suspect that they are not merely out to solve a crime, but perhaps tangled in one themselves. So, amazing book. There's so many tie-ins that fit so well, and there's so many like tie-in genres that fit so well within this book, and it's the same for the Amalfi Curse. So, Sarah Penner, amazing author. The next one is another kind of like webcomic turned graphic novel comic, but the author is Sewell, and specifically what I've read from her is the first 2 volumes, or what I've read from them what I have read are the first 2 volumes for Villains Are Destined to Die. I absolutely love this. And this is good if you're like kind of looking for like kind of the game style books, or books focused on games, where you get more of the game story rather than the story outside the game. So, and think of like dating sim style games. So if this is perfect if that's up your alley. So in this, playing daughter of the Duke's super love project as the easy mode heroine, Yvonne makes charming the male characters a breeze. But once you switch to hard mode and step into the shoes of Penelope, the misunderstood villain, it's nearly impossible to stay alive. So imagine the shock of suddenly waking up in Penelope's body. You know right away that your life is on the line. With love interests who will kill you if their affection meters drop too low, and the inability to speak without choosing from pre-selected dialogue, it quickly becomes clear that Penelope's chances have been rigged from the start, and this film might just be destined to die. So I have talked about this one quite a bit. It kind of taps into the my dating sim era when I was like a preteen going into my teen years, and this is like perfect. It's like the perfect addressing of that, and I absolutely love this. It's a great story, great topics, great way to cover certain topics. So Sewell, Villains Are Destined to Die, perfect. Now this next one kind of similarly to, what was it, Heaven Official's Blessing. With this one, I feel like more the anime is more talked about than the manga, especially with the remake of the anime. But what I want to recommend is Natsuki Takaya, and specifically First Baskets from Natsuki Takaya. And again, dealing with trauma, with family relations, with family obligations, with family dynamics. It's like there's a whole lot going on in this series. And the anime, I have not watched the new animes, which I have to do at some point. But the manga is like absolute perfection. This was one of my first manga. I think Magic Knight Rebirth was officially my first manga, but this was like close after it, because my sister had the full series for both Magic Knight Rebirth and Fruits Basket, and Magic Knight Rebirth was really short, so I got through that quickly. But again, this was like a close second to it. Absolutely love this. And in this, you're following Toru Honda, who her father had died when she was young, and her mother died recently in terms of storyline, and she went to live with her grandfather, and then some of her other family on that grandfather's side moves in, and then there's going to be some work done, so she has to move out, and then she says she'll find a place to not make anyone worry, but then she ends up living in a tent, and then she discovers that when she built where she built the tent. It's on Soma property, and she goes to school with one of the Somas, and then she kind of gets not indoctrined, but she kind of gets adopted by this one small group of the Somas. So that's what this is about. Not really adopted, but she gets brought in by them, and then they start interacting and enjoying each other's time, and then you get further down the line. And then the last book, the last author that I'm going to read, this is the main author where I am going to say you do not have to read every single thing they've written. And the book that I'm going to recommend by them is a prologue. It's something I've talked about on my channel before. And it kind of acts as a prologue to later works, kind of a prologue. But you don't have to read the later works. You can just stick with this one. And the author is JRR Tolkien. Again, I've talked about him on my channel before. Book is The Hobbit. Again, you can just stick with The Hobbit. You don't necessarily need to read Lord of the Rings. I love recommending Lord of the Rings, but to recommend JRR Tolkien is like you have to recommend The Hobbit, because Lord of the Rings can be kind of hard to get into. But in this, you follow Bilbo, who is basically strong-armed into an adventure with 13 dwarves and a wizard to help reclaim the dwarves' homeland. And honestly, this is such... Like, this was like... This Hobbit and Lord of the Rings was the start of fantasy, really, as we know it today. But I think The Hobbit... I would technically classify this as cozy fantasy, because even though we have slightly higher stakes than what we would attach to cozy fantasy today, there are slightly higher stakes than the normal cozy fantasy stakes, but like just like the whole vibes of this is cozy fantasy 1000%. So you do just, if you're going to read J.R.R. Tolkien and just want to stick with one book, Hobbit. You don't need to read Lord of the Rings, and if you can just like watch the movies. It's not really, I don't think it's sacrilegious to say that, but The Hobbit, if you're going to read any books by J.R.R. Tolkien, just read The Hobbit. It's amazing. And it's short, too. And depending on, like, the copy you get, it can be small and short. Short and sweet. So, that is The Hobbit. So, that is the end of this video. If you have any recommendations for authors who aren't as well seen or aren't as well read on TikTok, on BookTok, comment down below. If you made it to this point in the video, who is your favorite author? Let me know who your favorite author to recommend is down below in the comments. Doesn't necessarily have to be your favorite author, but your favorite author to recommend to people. Again, if you made it this far, let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.